Seahawks fans, wherever you may be, thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers here to talk Seahawks football. We've got some game stuff we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about practices, what we're seeing, what we're hearing, and all that good stuff. Welcome in, Keith. How you doing?
Doing good. Yeah, it's a nice, we got some football to talk about here again today, and another game coming up this weekend, and that'll be the last tune-up game, and then the team will start getting ready for week one.
Yeah, cut downs are within a week now, next Tuesday. And that's going to be hard. I mean, I've been really looking at this roster, trying to figure it all out. We're prepping for another show this weekend. We've been asked to kind of revisit the 53-man roster a little bit and do some predictions. And the back end of this roster, spots, 50 to 58 right now are basically kind of up for grabs, and a lot of bubble players this year. A lot of those guys will end up on the practice squad. We can bring them back and forth, a few different times and so forth. But you always do that with a little trepidation because you can lose guys, and in this season, especially at the wide receiver room, the cornerbacks, there's going to be some players that we're going to lose, and it's going to be tough, but that's the way it is. And I'd rather have that than the opposite problem, which is no talent, and you can't win in the NFL with no talent. So it's better to have too much than too little. So let's talk briefly about the Tennessee game. And I know you kind of wanted to talk about the offense a little bit, and I'd like to get into that too. And I know we've got some notes and we've got some individual players we're gonna talk about and so forth. At least I've got a few pages of notes to discuss, but I just kind of wanted to see what your thoughts initially, I think, are on Sam Howell's performance.
I thought, Sam Howell is playing pretty well. He isn't making, the bad decision. He's giving his guys a chance. I mean, the points aren't there, but I don't think that's the emphasis for him particularly. It's, hey, let's show that you aren't a turnover machine like you were last year when he led the NFL in interceptions. And so far, so good. Like, he hasn't made that dumb throw. He's been much more content with just throwing the ball away, living to play another down. And given our concerns early on, with him, that's what we want to see. And so he's being smart with the football and that kind of stuff. And I think that's what matters the most. I would like to see him, be a little bit more dynamic, but it isn't, that isn't what I'm focused on.
Well, and certainly they're not going to show their hands in preseason games as far as being a little bit more dynamic. They're definitely vanilla this time of the year. That goes for any quarterback in any situation and any scheme across the NFL, and especially this year. I think that they're kind of playing it close to the vest. I think they want to see the basics. They want to see the execution. They want to see the communication, things they've been working on in practice, little details kind of come into play. And overall, I think they're doing pretty good. The offensive line, I think, it has its ups and downs, as we probably would have predicted. But I'm seeing some good things out of individual players, seeing some bad things, but also correctable, and watching for the corrections, and they seem to be happening. So I agree with you on Sam Howell. There's some key throws when he has time, like when the pocket is completely protected for him. He's pretty accurate. And I really like the touch on his kind of mid to deeper throws. That touchdown in the end zone to Easop Winston was a great example of what he can do.
That was pretty.
It was
that
nice.
was That was
And it
kind
was
of
very much in sync. And
it was kind of a veteran move by Winston, even though he's not a veteran, but he was there
it's been around for a little bit though.
And got his hands out onto the football as late as you can, so the defender did not know when the ball was coming in. Oftentimes you see guys put their hands out, and that just gives the defender knowledge that the ball's approaching, and they can turn their head and make a play. So that whole play was well done. And you're right, that was a great throw. It was a great throw.
On the offensive line side of things, I thought the competition there between Haynes and Anthony Bradford is really interesting to me. And in this game, they both had a chance to be out there at the same time. Mm-hmm. Both at left guard with Haynes, right guard with Bradford. I thought they both had some good moments, especially as the game developed a little bit. They only got limited amount of snaps.
I think that's the future. That's the future of Seattle's guards.
I was thinking the same thing, and I really enjoyed watching Haynes just kind of beat up on a couple of players and a couple different plays, and Bradford the same. Mm-hmm. I thought, they probably were a wash in this particular game, although I thought Haynes maybe just really is trying to play his way onto this roster, and so I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen. Well, I mean, not on the roster, but on the starting
onto the field. Yeah.
Five.
He's still pursuing beating out Bradford and winning that job. Which this late in the game, the fact that Bradford's played well enough to hang on to it means it's less and less likely, but they're still both battling, and it's good to see. Like both those guys are fighting to get better. And
there's no bad news here, right?
Yeah, that's the future of the line. It's not Laken Tomlinson, who's
and it could be this year.
Pretty old. I wouldn't be surprised if that move is made permanent at some point this season, or basically whether it's through injury through Tomlinson or just, poor play or something, you're going to see Bradford and Haynes as the two guards going forward.
Yeah. There's going to be some learning curves there that might be a little painful at times. It might even cost us. You just don't know. Two relatively inexperienced players. Obviously, Haynes, a rookie, hasn't taken a snap in the NFL. Now, it looks great against this sort of competition and so forth. But when the games really start, it's a little bit of a different animal. So we'll see how that goes. Tyrese Knight on the defensive side to me is really kind of standing out. Now, yes, it's just tackling, but he's doing it really well. He's diagnosing, he's getting into the holes. He's got a couple of tackles for loss. He had 8 tackles total against the Titans. I like the idea that the coach is saying, okay, hey, dude, you're a rook. Your tackling is awesome, but don't hang your hat on that. That's not what's going to define you. Especially in my defense, you're going to need to diagnose. You're going to need to move. You're going to need to be able to call out the defense and on and on. And I really like the way that Mike McDonald kind of has that approach, not just with Tyrese, but with all the players, with all the rookies, especially. Just kind of a nice little subtle keep working because you think you might have it. You had a great game, but you're not anywhere near done.
Yeah. Which he shouldn't be near done, right? I mean, all these guys should be looking to improve.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, he's just continuing to challenge guys, which is what it is. But he does so in a way that's not demeaning and, kind of the old school Bill Parcells kind of way where, they just drill into people. And I've just never been a fan of that coaching style, but I like the idea of these guys being challenged without having to be a jerk about it.
So McDonald said, basically, he said, you didn't believe me. I told you a guy makes tackles, but let's be very pleased with the tackles. And then he said, but time to step up to the next level of communication wise, blitz, coverage, play recognition. it's almost like, hey man, you're not a rookie anymore. You got to grow up fast. You got to be ready to go if your number is called. So, hey, let's go, man. Let's not be settled with making tackles during preseason. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And these, maybe these things were said in the background, obviously, probably, when Pete Carroll was the coach. But the public praise out there was pretty prominent, more prominent, I think, than it is right now with McDonald. And McDonald's kind of a piece of chocolate with a stick. I'm gonna give you a little bit. I'm gonna give you a little bit of sweetness, but I'm also gonna hit you on the back of the hand and remind you that you got a lot more to do. So,
no, I like the fact that he's challenging guys, but he's also at the same time recognizing when people put in the work. So
yeah,
I think it's a balance, and I think he's kind of finding that balance, at least with the aspects of it that we are able to witness. And based on what you hear from the players, I assume that it's the same in the background, because they love his attention
talking
to
about
detail.
teaching all the time. Yeah, they're talking about teaching.
So
even awesome. Guys like Kayvon Wallace have been around for a while.
Yeah,
he's talking about how he appreciates the fact that he is continuing to learn, and that there are things to learn, and that he's being taught, and it's pretty cool for him. I wanted to go back to the offensive line and have you talk a little bit about Connor Williams.
Yeah, Connor Williams practiced. He is out there. They've got him on a pitch count, so he's working out with the starters. They're making no there's no mystery. He is the starting center. They also know that he's not 100%. And he's also not in as good a shape as everyone else, because they've been out there practicing every day, and he's, been trying to work out and get healthy. So they're going to build him up over the next, 3 weeks. But he was out there with the ones early in practice. And then when they got to the 11 on 11s, they rotated Oluwatimi in for a few series, and then he came back in for one. And, they're just trying to build up his endurance and all that kind of stuff. But he is the guy, and that is a massive upgrade. Like,
so
we may not see it until week 1, but
yeah,
you'll notice him. He's a really good player.
We came into the camp with basically two pretty sizable holes that we needed to address during training camp and try to solve before the season. And one of those was to figure out if Oluwatimi was going to take that job and look really good. And the other situation was the Bradford Haynes competition. And then Tomlinson was basically settled. Now, whether your opinion is he's just a middling veteran and we can't expect too much out of him, nonetheless, that he hasn't been challenged in camp, and he's going to have that role, at least initially. And that seems to be not an issue or a problem necessarily yet. And now with the Connor Williams signing, and, everything indicates that he's going to be ready week 1. Now we just have to figure out this competition thing with Bradford and Haynes, which is the best possible case scenario, really. Both those guys are elevating each other, and
because it's not a matter of
best person's going to win.
Is one of them going to show that they can be competent? It's a battle of which one is the most competent. And that's the one who's going to get to play. And so that's different than what we knew, especially at center. That's not what we had before the Connor Williams signing. The drawback, though, is that Abe Lucas is still not practicing and still not spending most of practice out on the field with everyone. He's still working inside, doing rehabby things in the building, and not even out at practice.
Yeah, it's looking more and more like he's going to start the season on IR, miss the first 4 weeks, plus probably a couple weeks of practice to come back in.
Yep, they'll put him on the PUP list, which means they can activate him after 4 weeks. But that just gets him onto the practice field and not on the 53. And then
got a 14-day window. Yep.
They have 2 weeks to put him on the 53. So
one thing to keep in mind too is the bye week this year is week 10.
Mm-hmm.
So that wouldn't kind of come into play there. So I feel like at this point, it's just better to do that. Give him the extra 6 weeks in addition to the 4. So that's 2.5 months, nearly 2.5 months, in addition to where we're at today, for him to get back into condition and see if he can go. And,
I would not wait until week 10.
No, not week 10, but if you put him on the pup, activate him after 4, got the 6 plus the 3 now before the season starts, that's 9 weeks.
I thought you were adding the extra weeks to the bye. I'm like, no, don't add those weeks.
I mean,
I would get him out.
What it takes, if that's what it takes to have a healthy Abe Lucas, I would do that. I'm hoping that wouldn't be the case, but
yeah, like I'm just saying,
I'd rather have him be 100%.
Well, yes, but it's not like, oh, well, we'll wait because we want that extra time, or he needs that extra time. If he does, then he does. But if he doesn't, I wouldn't wait just because it's a convenient time to make a change. He is significantly better.
I agree.
Than Fant. He's a major upgrade, and he needs to be out there if he can be. But if he's still battling back from that January knee surgery and isn't ready, then he's not ready. And I agree. I think more he is almost certainly at this point going to start the year on the pup list, which is like IR, but since he's never practiced this year, it's a different designation is really what it is. But yeah, he's not going to be available for the first few weeks.
Well,
it's unfortunate for him.
We're speculating right now. We just don't know for sure, but I'm just saying we've got 3 weeks from this Sunday until the opening kickoff, and he's not practicing yet. And you have to go through. So if they activated him on Monday, he might have a shot. But if it's not next week, it's not going to happen. I don't think.
Yeah. At least the thing is, they might look at it and be like, okay, his timetable is week 3. He'll be ready to play. They might keep him on the roster because they don't want to wait till week 5 to get him out there. Plus, it allows him to practice whenever he's ready to get out on the field and practice, rather than having to wait through 4 weeks of not practicing. But here's the thing. So when asked about it after practice, somebody asked him about it. His response was, let me see if I can find it. He was like, yeah, I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah. He says right now, probably don't want to answer that question. Quote unquote. Yeah. So that's like Pete saying that it's legit.
It's legit. Yeah.
Right. I'm not going to tell you because I don't have to. I don't have any injury reports right now this time of the year, so we're not going to talk about it. But it's not positive, so it can be viewed as a negative, which it is. Let's stick with injuries before we get to some of the other good stuff, though. I just want to say that the Seahawks expect Jerome Baker back for the season opener. He's on track to come back, according to McDonald. Missed the last couple of weeks with a hamstring. That was after he missed time with a broken wrist, rehabbing from that. So things are not optimal for Jerome Baker, but he's good enough to where you definitely want him on the field when he's available, and the Seahawks want him there for sure.
Yeah, but we've seen enough from Tyrese Knight to know the team will be okay with him and Kayvon Wallace if they have to go there, right? Especially since only one of those two is going to be on the field for most plays, because if they're going to go to the nickel, you're going to pull one of them off. And so, like I said, they've seen enough that when they're in their base defense, they're going to feel comfortable with Tyrese Knight being in there. Now, you'd rather have Baker, but yeah, I mean, that's just what it is.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think that's the comments you're hearing from McDonald's, like, hey, dude, you're not quite there yet. You got to work on this. We'd like to see this. We want to get you here. I think those are all indicators that Mike McDonald's getting this guy ready to play. Now, it may be because of injury, or it may be because he's the best option they have on the team. I'm not sure exactly where he sits right now, but it wouldn't shock me if the kid plays himself onto a starting role at some point, even with those two other players, just because he's just had all the reps in training camp and during the games. He's just kind of ready to go. He doesn't have any injury situations, so he's going to get a lot of playing time.
He's going to get playing time. I don't expect him to it's just going to be him and Wallace. And he's going to play 100% of the snaps and it's going to be Baker and Wallace that rotate in and out and whatever. I don't expect that, but they will find a way to get him on the field. And even if Baker's healthy, they're going to be, okay, we're going to play him a certain number of snaps and allow him to continue to get healthy and not expect him to play every snap. So you're going to see Tyrese tonight no matter what.
So sticking with injuries, just one more time here. Tight ends are all of a sudden becoming a little bit of a concern.
All of them.
Noah Fant sat out practice this past couple weeks with a lower body injury, quote unquote. Don't know exactly what that is. Pharaoh Brown was injured his foot in the last practice with the Titans. Didn't play, obviously, in the game. Now he's seeking a second opinion. He did have foot surgery.
I read that he already had the second opinion and had foot surgery.
I missed that. I did not see that.
Now I need to find that because that's.
I just know that he had a second opinion, which is not encouraging, but did not hear anything about a surgery. So why don't you look for that for a second? And then, so Pharaoh Brown's out, and Jack Westover missed Saturday's game with a hamstring injury, and didn't no indication from McDonald how long Westover would be out, or he may end up being stashed at this point. We just don't know. And then with Fant, Brown, and Westover limping around, Brady Russell, Tyler Mabry, and AJ Barner were the only guys available. They went out and signed a couple of guys to be on the roster to take reps and possibly play in this game. And I think at the time of the injury, I heard Pharaoh Brown say, "Yeah, he's confident that he's going to be fine. He'll be back on time." Now,
yeah, I heard that too. That he's like, "Yeah, I'll be ready for week 1."
Yeah.
But then, okay, so yeah, it says he was on crutches following his foot injury Thursday, and seeking a second opinion. Yeah, no, I think it was following his foot injury, and I think my brain said foot surgery, and so I misread that. So, yeah, I was, I was going to be like, yeah. So Brady Russell just made the roster.
If he had foot surgery, that essentially would end his season, and AJ Barner would be pressed into the starting blocking tight end role for this team. Now, I think they really like. I just lost his name.
Brady Russell.
Brady Russell. They really like Brady Russell, and talk about he's a good guy too. He's just a super
out
guy.
There, the guy's just making plays.
Yeah.
And McDonald compared him to Steve Smith Sr. The wide receiver.
Interesting.
Not that he's that kind of player in terms of whatever, but the guy just always found a way to make an impact, a positive impact. And that's what he was referring to. It's like, just go make a play every day. And,
that type of player is going to be on the roster, if that means they have one less wide receiver or one less offensive lineman or one less running back on this roster. That's probably what's going to happen, because this guy is super important, not only just at the tight end role, but in special teams, especially. Okay. So the last thing I want to talk about, not the last thing, but one of the other things I want to talk about that's not related to actually, any play in particular, is just want to talk to you about the wide receivers a little bit, and the level of importance this year about how those guys are used and how physical they want them to be, and the blocking and so forth. I want to talk to you about Laviska Shenault a little bit, ended up being a guy that I researched when we signed him, but I knew him coming out of college, but then I kind of lost track of him a little bit. He just kind of faded away on a couple of bad teams. And I thought, this guy's got a chance in this scheme to have an impact. And then with the kicking rule change, I thought he could have another weight on the roster with the special teams role as a returner. And sure enough, this kid has come in and really kind of endeared himself to the coaching staff with his physicality and mentality that he brings every day, and his work ethic. And now it turns out he's a better wide receiver than advertised as far as his route tree and the things that he can do on the field, especially with the football in his hands after the catch. Talk to me a little bit about him and maybe Jake Bobo and why Ryan Grubb's offense really puts an importance on blocking.
Well, yeah, I mean, he talks about it. He's like, yeah, everyone's like, thinks that we just want to push the ball down the field, whatever. He talks about it starting up front, and you run the ball and then you throw off of that. And so you got to be able to run the ball. And if you want to run the ball in this league, you got to be able to block everybody. And so you need your wide receivers to come in and block safeties and sometimes block linebackers in order to spring and create running lanes for your running backs. And he is going to demand that guys do that. He's not going to be okay with guys just like, okay, it's a run play, so I'm just going to jog over here and whatever. And when you start putting an emphasis on stuff like that, the guys that are willing to put in the work, they get noticed and they get a bump with the coaches as far as roster spots. And Bobo and Chenault have both been really good in these games at getting downfield and making impact blocks.
Do you see that block that Chenault had on the kick return?
Yeah.
That was amazing. And
it was
nice. The team celebrated him around him and lifted him up. And I was just like, wow. That's exactly what we're looking for. I
think we've reached a point where there's zero probability he doesn't make the team. I think it comes down to the 6th spot, and Drake Young is in that competition, but he's not the only guy in that competition. Aesop Winston Jr. continues to try and make a case and say, "Hey, I belong." That touchdown,
he does.
God, that touchdown was nice.
But that's not it. I mean, he's been consistent throughout this entire process.
And he returns punts.
He leads the team in receiving yards and receptions in preseason. Doesn't mean anything in 2 games, obviously, but nonetheless, the guy's trying to stand out for sure.
Yeah, and I think that Cody White's really stood out in practice, but he hasn't really shown up in the games. Whereas Aesop Winston Jr. has found ways to show up in the games too.
Yes.
And so both of those guys they're still in the competition. This is not a done deal. Any of those 3 could make that 6th spot. I still believe that's true. I think that likelihood Cody White is not going to, because I think he's most likely to end up going through waivers and end up on the practice squad and not have that not be with a doubt. But he can still earn that roster spot. And if he earns it, they're not going to send him cut him just because he might get through waivers more easily than the other 2. If he earns the spot, he'll earn the spot. So
it's really going to be tough. I mean, now you're talking about multiple position groups impacting that decision as well. So whether they keep 4 tight ends, whether they keep 4 running backs, whether they keep that 6th wide receiver.
God, and the running back,
etc.
The running back position didn't get any clearer in this game, because now you've got a possible injury to the number 2 back Charbonnet, and so now you're going to want to keep that 4th running back overall, and then you have McIntosh, which has stepped up and just played really, really well.
It seemed like they made a decision in this game to feature him and hold Holani back. And I wonder if that's somewhat telling in some sense.
Yeah, I think they were trying to get him reps. They're like, we don't have Charbonnet with the ones. We're going to get McIntosh all those reps with the ones because we want him to be ready. They could have given those reps to Halani to get him ready, but they didn't. And so it
what
feels
does that tell you?
It tells me very much that they're ready to move forward with McIntosh as the third.
So Michael Sean Duger thinks that Halani's secured the number 3 spot, and they were basically just giving McIntosh an opportunity to either make this team as the 4th guy or audition for another role somewhere else.
I don't know. Like, I know he said that, and he had he has Halani on the roster and McIntosh off, but from what I've seen in the 2 preseason games, I've liked what I've seen from McIntosh.
Yeah.
He's been better than I expected him to be. And I think I don't necessarily agree. Now, I know it in practice, Halani has looked really explosive and good, but in the games, McIntosh is
again, he was only given 2 or 3 carries in this game, so you can't.
Yeah, but he had a bunch in the first game, including all of those carries down on the goal line when he couldn't get in. And yeah, you can put the blame on him not getting in on Oluwatimi, who got blown up, and that kind of stuff. But I mean, that just kind of is what it is.
But he did get in from 11 yards out, and he looked fantastic doing it too. Yeah, the short yardage stuff, you got to be able to do that. I mean, that's going to be important in the NFL. So,
yeah, but Zach Charbonnet exists on this team.
So talk to me about Zach Charbonnet, Keith. I'm not completely clear what the injury situation is with Zach.
It looked like it sounds like it's not a long-term thing. And he'll be back. But he wasn't available. He's not available. He's still out right now.
What did he tweak?
I thought it was a hamstring, if I read that right. But they expect him to be back after the Browns game, and then to be able to prep for week 1. So I'm not that concerned. But if that injury lingers at all, you're going to want an extra running back on the roster, and so that might be okay. Now we got to keep 4. Just in case he's not available week 1, they still want to have their 3. And what does that do? Does that mean they only keep 3 tight ends and you have to let somebody go? Or does that mean that, you only keep 5 wide receivers or only 9 offensive linemen? Like these situations have
where you keep 26
impact.
Offensive players and you
have to cut a defensive guy. Like,
yeah. See, that's
okay. We'll see if I guess Miles Adams could go and hope that you can re-sign him when you have an opportunity to. And okay, but there's
tough decisions.
In the end, like if everyone's healthy, maybe you're okay with saying, we'll let George Halani go to the practice squad and risk losing him in order to keep out all these other guys. But with Charbonnet, banged up, you're like, no, we have to keep him. He's got to be on the roster. We can't afford, even if it's a small chance of losing him, we can't afford to lose him. And so now you have to put someone else out there.
So switching gears to the defense, I wanted to talk about something just super fun for me, which is Seattle's pass rush and defensive line and just general overall performance on the defensive side of the ball in the important snaps in preseason. Now, not all snaps are created equal. Those third quarter, fourth quarter snaps have been kind of ugly at times, but early on in games, man, this thing's fun to watch. When you get down into the regular season, we're going to have Jaron Reed and Byron Murphy and Dre Jones and Leonard Williams and Mike Morris and Uchenna Nwasu and Boye Mafe and Derek Hall and Darrell Taylor, and they all can put pressure on the quarterback and get to the quarterback. And a guy like Derek Hall seems to have taken a massive leap this year. Probably the most improved returning player from last season, Derek Hall.
I'd support
Talk to me about how you're feeling about probably just, focus on just the pass rush this season.
Well, we've seen Mafe and Hall living in the backfield and just causing a lot of problems for opposing offenses. And this is without Uchenna Nwasu playing much, as they're metering him and giving him like the veteran rests and that kind of stuff. And Nwasu might be the best pass rusher of the three of them currently. Just that alone, like those three guys should have everyone be excited. But the fact that they're getting push up front, that you're seeing guys like Byron Murphy make it so that opposing quarterbacks can't step up in the pocket. Is this going to make it easier on those guys coming around the edge to get there? And overall, like I'm really excited about this pass rush. I'm with you. I'm a little concerned about Dre Jones and his health. And, this is a guy that's changing positions. He's built like a defensive end, but they're going to ask him to play outside linebacker.
Yeah. And so he's got to be twitchy, but he's not a twitchy guy.
And he's not, he's twitchy for a defensive end, but I only want him moving forward. I don't want him going back into coverage or anything. And he's not practicing. And so like that has me a little concerned. I'm worried that he's going to get the veteran bump and be put on the field even when the other guys are more prepared, just simply because of his name and contract. But really, that's like the only thing. I mean, the pass rush looks like it's going to be tremendous.
Yeah. And stronger, like, and stopping the run. And I mean, these guys seem to be able to do it all this year compared to last year. And we got the same guys. I mean, sans Byron Murphy, obviously.
That's a big improvement.
That's Byron a huge Murphy improvement, but everyone else is back, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a lot of the same guys up front and at those outside linebacker spots, but
the scheme is just so much better for these guys.
Yeah, the scheme is so much better. That has a lot to do with it. And it's just been we saw it a year ago. Boye Mafe made this massive jump between year 1 and year 2. And now we're seeing Derek Hall do the same thing. Just make this massive jump in just knowledge of what's going on and ability to make plays and be disruptive and all of that. That it's a huge
and Mike Morris
positive.
Too. Mike, I'm hearing great things about Mike.
Oh
Morris.
Yeah, Mike Morris keeps showing up like on everyone's radar. Like the guy has looked explosive, and they're asking him to do all sorts of things,
like bull rush strong.
Yeah.
And Derek Hall, same. I mean, you saw Derek Hall just completely ram a player back into the backfield and make a play.
Which, I mean, coming out of college, he was like, he's going to win with speed, not power, because whatever. And then you watch him just dominate with power, and you're like, all right, so this guy has made the most of the offseason and learning from his rookie year. Like, wow.
Yes.
So
right, he's not going to show up in camp and get pushed around again.
Mm-hmm.
That he made that decision, and it's unbelievable. And then Byron Murphy, of course, it's a plethora of options and diversity and scheme, multiple scheme options and so forth. I would think that Mike McDonald is absolutely just giddy over his toolbox. And that's not even counting guys like Devin Witherspoon and Kayvon Wallace and Julian Love and Terrell Dodson and Tyrese Nice that can blitz, so you've got all these, that's just kind of rushing 4 and having a nice little rotation and kind of maybe, a fifth guy once in a while. But they've really got some options here to be exotic, to kind of really cause massive havoc. This combined with that Connor Williams thing, we invested in the trenches up front on the offense as well. has me very, very, very positive. I'm worried about how positive I am about this team and the opportunity to be successful, because if they are successful in what they're trying to do, Kayvon Wallace came out and said, we're no joke. Like, we are seriously trying to be the best defense in the world. And then he followed that up by in the world. And he was dead serious when he said it. And I think that's, I'm not saying that they're going to achieve that this year, but they have the beginnings of being able to do that. And it's pretty exciting, especially when you combine that with the back end. Now, yeah, maybe they've got to solve a few things in the middle, but they're going to be in nickel so often. Their middle, quote unquote, linebackers are only going to be on the field together maybe 25 to 30% of the time. And so that they're going to limit that liability as best they have by adding an additional defensive back on the field most of the time.
Mm-hmm. And they've got the quality at defensive back to manage it. What we've seen so far, and it's preseason, we'll get into the regular season and let these guys battle it out against starters before we make any definitive statements. But what we've seen so far is the success of this defense not just an indictment on Clint Hurt and last year's defensive coaching staff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
it's preseason. It is preseason.
I said that we'll get in because maybe they're not gonna. Things will fall apart a little bit. Once they get into the season and you're facing more starters and you're getting, more complex schemes and stuff to play against, and we'll see. But so far, what we've seen, it's like they're getting twice or three times as much production out of the same guys.
I think you're seeing what you get. Like there's no masking this or disguise or some sort of, I'm pretty confident that this is going to translate, but you're right. We'll see. We'll see.
So can I bring up a couple of negative things just because, I'm the cynical old fart of Seahawks land.
Yeah.
DJ James was incredibly disappointing in this last game. Just missed a couple of awful missed tackles, just complete whiffs.
Got a missed time penalty as well.
Yeah.
Frustration penalty.
And yeah, I mean, it was extended a drive that shouldn't have been extended. And, okay, I mean, that happens to everyone, but just the awful missed tackles and having balls caught right in front of him. And
when you're in a close competition, and he's right on the bubble.
He's on the bubble. And honestly,
a game like that can ruin it for you.
Yeah. I looked at that and I'm like, I know they want to keep the draft picks because they invested a draft pick in them. But from what we saw in the first game where he missed a couple of tackles and was like, okay. And then he saw this game where honestly, I thought he played pretty poorly. I have a hard time viewing him on the 53.
Yeah. Again, he's got a chance at redemption this week in practice and then, next game, but cut downs are Tuesday.
Yeah.
So that's it for him. He's got literally, 3 more days here to make a case.
Yeah. And whereas Kobe Bryant played well, like really well in the first one, I thought he had a rough game as well in week 2. And that was disappointing because I was hoping that what we saw in the first week was like, all right, this guy maybe he's figured some stuff out and he's made that step. Cause there's like, okay, there's, in terms of like pure athleticism, there's some deficits, but there's still something to work with. The guy's smart and he knows football and that kind of stuff. And I was hoping that we'd see a big improvement, and week 1 gave me confidence. Like it gave me, courage to say, yeah, this guy might have figured it out. But then what I saw again, it's the same thing that happened most of last year, just missing tackles. It was disappointing, to say the least.
Yeah. Well, what are you going to do? I mean, he's clearly the fourth guy on the safety roster, but you don't necessarily have to keep him, but he does offer you a diverse toolbox set of skills. Tyakota played well, I thought.
He played significantly better than
he's
Kobe
had
Bryant.
Also a good camp, from what I understand. He's there in the competition. Marquise Blair, I just don't know if he's been around long enough to endear himself to the coaching staff. But the other option, if they don't keep 4 safeties, is they keep 3, and then they'll keep an additional nickel guy, which could be DJ James, could be D Williams, who they really like and is trying to play his way on this roster.
He's playing his way on the roster with special teams. He's going to be a hard cut. I still think they cut him and get him to the practice squad. And
would you rather have D Williams or Kobe Bryant? And that's what the team is going to be asking itself.
See, to me, it's not a choice between those two. It's Kobe Bryant or one of the other 2 safeties, either Marquise Blair or Tyakota. And Tyakota's played well in this last game. Marquise Blair played well. He's much better up in the box and playing the run and that kind of stuff. But they had him back as, the deep third safety and doing those things. And he made some plays back there too. I think you're right. He was a late addition and it's hard to, come in when you're that far behind, and make up the difference with a guy like Akota who's played well. But we know
you can get a guy like
there.
Marquise Blair onto the practice squad. You can get a guy like that onto the practice squad.
Probably because, he's coming off an injury and
with other teams. He's just,
So I mean, that's this type of situation where I think you get him through, and maybe keep Tyakota. I could see them, cutting Kobe Bryant for one of the other safeties. I have a hard time seeing them cutting Kobe Bryant for D Williams. Just because then you're keeping 7 cornerbacks.
Well, Artie Burns plays nickel. Trey Brown can play nickel.
Yeah, but they don't play safety.
Obviously. Yeah, but a guy like Witherspoon could play all over the place. I'm not sure about D Williams. I'm not sure his overall skill set, but I agree, and especially this coaching staff is going to put a priority on their safeties, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Keeping
just special teams
special teams. I agree.
And that's why
Kobe Bryant may in fact warrant a roster spot just based on everything he contributes to the team. I'm not sure.
D Williams might warrant a roster spot based entirely on special teams. He's fighting. I mean, he's in there as a kick returner and as a punt returner, and he's in there covering kicks and blocking on kickoffs.
Now you're talking about
everything.
The defense, how the defense and offense come together when it's time to build a roster, whether you keep 24 on one and 26 on the other and so forth.
Yeah.
Because if you keep D Williams and you keep Kobe Bryant, you're probably going to have to cut Aesop Winston, or you're going to have to cut your third tight end. Or only keep 3 tight ends, and maybe only keep 3 running backs, and have 2 running backs you cut onto your practice squad.
Yeah,
I mean, these are the type of decisions.
It may force you to put Pharaoh Brown on IR and not
possibly
and lose him for the first 4 weeks, even though he might be ready to go by week 2.
You'll kick the can down the road and make a decision in 4 weeks.
Yeah. Well, goodbye. Then someone else will have been hurt. I mean, it's the NFL.
That's true, but
So.
Right. You just got to build your best roster day one, and let everything fall that way. One last thing I wanted to talk to you about, and then we'll get out of here, is Geno Smith. Garofalo reported that Geno Smith, I'm unclear as to whether his manager is asking the Seahawks for a contract extension, or Geno has approached the team directly about a new contract. Any thoughts?
They have no reason to do that now. They need to let the season play out, because if Geno comes in and plays well, then he won't be in a better negotiating spot against Seattle than right now. Even if he comes in and plays really well, if he comes in and plays or he gets hurt and then, they have to go with Sam Howell, then Geno would have a significantly weaker negotiating position. And in the end, he's an older guy. He's always been a bridge. And whether Sam Howell's the guy or not, probably not. Eventually they have to move on to someone else. And I wouldn't do it now. I'd wait and then do it after the season based on the results of the season.
I agree with the first thing you said, which was that he doesn't really have any negotiating power right now. The team has full control. And no matter how he plays, unless it's just over the moon, leads the league in, touchdowns, yards, everything, leads them to a Super Bowl. That's the only scenario where Geno's contract becomes unaffordable for the Seahawks. I think everything else is in Seattle's favor as far as waiting, because like you said, I don't think it's going to get any more expensive for them, whether they extend him today or whether they extend him next March or whether they let him play out 2025 and then move on. I think all the control is in Seattle's wheelhouse.
Yeah, there's no incentive. Basically, he's like, I want to raise, and we're like,
I don't blame him. I don't blame him. I mean, I like Geno.
After last year, I don't support the assertion that he deserves one. He didn't play well enough last year to earn a raise.
If you just look at the metrics, and that's all I'm saying, is that he's probably the 12th best quarterback in this league. And he gets paid about the 18th best salary. So there's just a little gap. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not going to go any further than that because don't need to. I think there is room there where they could token extend him, if you will, if they wanted to, without really pledging any new dollars, but they could switch some stuff around to give him a little bit more guarantees.
I look at more as
potentially
he's got 2 years left. This isn't like he's going into his contract year. He's got 2 years left, and he hasn't played well enough for this team to be like, no, we want to lock him up. It isn't about he's the 12th best or the 18th highest. He has not played well enough to warrant.
We could talk mid-season. I mean, based on his training camp, there's a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL that have great training camps. And he's one of them. He's had a great training camp. I'm not going to dispute that.
No,
but you got to show it on the field, especially with a new coaching staff, a new scheme, some offensive linemen that actually in your advantage, going to give you a little bit better protection. Go out and show me, and we'll talk. Mid-season about where we're at, and then we'll likely wait.
I mean, if he comes out and plays
the honest assessment.
If he comes out and plays like he did in the first half of
2022,
then he
continues that into the second half.
Yeah, like I'll be ready to add a year or two to his deal and give him a well-earned raise, because those first 7 or 8 games, he was excellent. But then things fell off, and last year wasn't good. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't bad.
It was out of his control, a lot of it.
True. And I would agree with you on that. The line was just awful, and there was no running game and lots of problems, but he also wasn't good. And so I don't believe he's in a position right now where he's had a season and a half of lesser play.
Yeah, if I was Geno, I'd be all over this mentality of this is my audition. I've got a brand new offensive coordinator whose scheme is definitely a net positive to my skill set, and I'm going to go out and show it, and I'm going to earn it, because I think just asking for it ahead of time is, I don't know.
It's hard. I understand from his point of view because of his age. Because if he waits another year before coming and asking for it, he's just another year older. He's now a 35-year-old quarterback. going into his year 30, age 36 season. And it's hard to ask for a lot of money when you're, right. So every year hurts him. So I don't think he's wrong to ask, but I don't think it's wrong for the Seahawks to say, nah, let's wait.
There are not many quarterbacks in his salary bracket in the NFL that are starting and potentially could be playoff caliber quarterbacks. There are not any that I can think of, other than maybe, I don't even know. Like, who compares to him right now in the NFL as far as salary and skill set?
Cousins.
I was going to say Kirk Cousins, but I think Kirk Cousins has $100 million guaranteed.
He does. Because at the time when that was signed, the Falcons were desperate.
But that doesn't make it, I get you, but nonetheless, it's a contract with a similar
I'm just saying, like,
skill set
if I'm the
player.
Seahawks, I'm not basing what we do about anything based on that contract. I'm like, I don't care. It's like the Browns and Deshaun Watson. Like, I don't care that he got that deal.
What we're saying in a general sense is forevermore we're banishing Geno Smith, not from playing, but from getting his bag, so to speak.
He got his bag.
Yeah, I know. But compared to the rest of the quarterbacks out there, I mean, this is a guy that's probably a Pro Bowl level quarterback. So top 8 to top 12 in any given season based on variables. And this looks very much like a season that's in his favor. I just think that it would benefit him to wait. Now, I get the idea, like you said, he's going to be 34 this year. He's going to be 35 next year. He's got 2 years remaining. 1 year is a dead cap deal. They can get rid of him. I would want the guarantees too. You know, you're one play away from being injured, and it's over. And I don't blame him, but it's baked right now. Your contract is a signed contract, and you got to go play. And we can talk next year.
And that's really what it comes down to is I don't blame him for asking, and I don't think it's in Seattle's best interest to indulge him.
I agree.
That doesn't mean you have to shut him down. Just be like, okay, we can, give us some numbers here. We're thinking, we're going to think about it. We'll talk to you again. When we get to the bye week, we'll meet with your people during the bye week, and we'll start laying some groundwork then. But yeah, I mean,
so do you think he's just looking for a couple $1 million?
No.
Right now,
I think he wants
guaranteed. Just throw me $2 more million guaranteed, and kind of a happy little contract that's kind of looks big, but it's really nothing. Maybe it adds an extra year, but it's empty. And
I don't think that. I think he wants 2026 added with some guarantees that year, and most of 2025 guaranteed. I think he wants the Seahawks to commit to him for this year,
which could
and
very
next
well
year.
Be smart if we're not talking about a whole bunch of extra money. If they can get out of 2026,
as long as they can get out of 2026,
if they realize that he's viable for 25, and it's hard to know in preseason of 24 if your quarterback is the guy you want in 2025, but if they can get him on a cheap enough contract, it might be worth it for Seattle to lock in one more season of Geno ball, because I think he is good enough with this roster, the way that it's being constructed, that he could take them, into the NFC Championship game type of a guy. But we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to, like, for them, like, who do they believe Geno is? The guy from 2022 or the guy from the rest of his career?
Brutal.
Because in 2022, he looked like a guy that deserves 45 million a year. Okay, last like 4 games weren't great, but the rest of the year and his overall stats were freaking like amazing. Last year, he was middle of the pack, and his Jets years, well, they were awful, but he was also with the Jets. So how much, are you going to put into there? like, who is he? And so I want to see, you've got a new scheme that's better suited for you. You've got a better offensive line. Go out, show us that the 2022 year was real, which you should have every opportunity and ability to do. And if you can go show us that that's who you are, yeah, we'll pay you. Because we want you in 2025 and we may want you in 2026. So yeah, we'll extend your contract and look at giving you some more money. But if you can't go out and show us that 2022 is real, especially now that the line's better, the scheme's better, right? All of those things. If you can't show us that, then we're not going to make a commitment to you because we need to find an actual franchise quarterback.
Anything else you want to cover?
Nah.
So we've got another show this week. We're going to talk about the final preseason game, what we're trying to look for there going against the Cleveland Browns at Lumen Field on Saturday, and then we can talk about some peripheral players that have a chance maybe to make this roster or lose their roster spot, and that's probably going to be the focus of the next show because that's really what we're going to be looking at in this game. Again, the final score doesn't really matter too much. Does sound like maybe starters will take a series or two. I know Cleveland's going to come in with their starters, and I know Mike McDonald was going to have their players talk about it. And I'm absolutely positive that if their starters are playing, our starters are playing.
Yeah, it was one of those things where he said he didn't want to announce anything because he needed to talk to some guys first.
Yeah.
Which to me sounds very much like the Browns announced their guys are playing. We're going to play ours.
Yeah.
We're going to go ones versus ones for a couple of series and then pull everyone.
Yes, I agree. So that'll be fun. And then on Sunday, we are, for anyone that's still with us at an hour and a couple minutes, we are doing a guest show appearance on the Hawks Rundown podcast. And we're going to be appearing with Dan Viennes and the guys over there, Bryce and Ryan, for a preseason recap show, kind of a roster, a little bit of a roster prediction show, and then a regular season prediction show. So it's going to be a big one. I think he's allocated, I think, a couple hours for this show. So if you're not doing anything Sunday afternoon, I think it starts at 2:30 Pacific time in the afternoon, and we can live stream it on our channel as well. So he's gonna set that all up for us. So it'll be fun. So until next time, you can follow Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can follow me at NW Seahawk. The show is Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Find us on your favorite podcast platform and our YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button, share it, leave a comment. Always enjoy those. And until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.